Hello there! It is another Tuesday, and that means it is, of course, time for another in real life video. This week, we are taking a general viewer submitted question, a question submitted by a general viewer just like you, and you could also attempt to submit your own. It will get added to our ever-growing and ever-shrinking list of questions. It could even be a, not even necessarily a question, but a, I don't know, a imposition, a statement, asking me to rank stupid stuff, because we got a bunch of those, and what can I say, I like doing it. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. This week's general viewer submit question comes from a user, a person, a viewer, whose username is somewhere in the lower third of the screen, right about now. And they ask, oh, let me see here, oh gosh, move this around a bit. There we go. Okay. I wrote some stuff down here just in case I wouldn't forget. They write in asking, how do you feel about guns in the Elder Scrolls 6? I'm a hard no. Which, fair enough. This is a question which came up a decent amount of time not too long ago when I think Skyrim had published, and it was sort of like on everybody's lips. It was an idea that was on everybody's lips about guns being in the Elder Scrolls, because there was that Skyrim creation, I think, that got published in some officious manner, which gives you access to what is effectively a Dwemer gun. Does it actually shoot like some kind of a, I don't know, something that isn't an arrow or a bolt? I have no idea. But either way, it's also kind of been this long-standing, I don't know what you would call it, what if sort of ponderance in so many words that people have about Elder Scrolls. Probably dialed up only more when BGS started getting a hold of Fallout and doing Skyrim but with guns, right? You know, there was the Far Cry 3, I think it was, ad campaign, which came out around a little bit after Skyrim, and they literally said it's like Skyrim but with guns. Which not quite, but I get what you're saying, and you know what, that's enough. But I would say, I would say I agree. I agree, it's a hard no for me as well. And that's sort of where they left it. But I thought, hey, what if we spin out this question into something a bit bigger, maybe a bit catchier, right? Well, if we algorithm up this question a little bit. What if we algorithm it up? Which, you know what that means? We're making a top 10 list. And well, I don't know about top 10. We're making a list of 10 things in no particular order. And also, we need to have the title be a negative, right? We need it to be a little confrontational and a little negative. If that's what got you here, welcome to my stupid world. Welcome. But nonetheless, let's go through 9 other things that should not be. I feel like this is almost like a David Letterman bit, right? But let's go through 9 other things that shouldn't be in the Elder Scrolls, specifically Elder Scrolls 6. Now, before we get started here, there's a little bit of, well, there's a few little stipulations to this to make it a little bit tougher, because I did actually have to think about this a fair amount. It was tough to arrive at that number of 10. And the first stipulation, which I wrote down here, is it needs to be, or it cannot have some sort of double negative, if you know my meaning. So, for instance, I don't want one of them to be like, I do not want them to not have dual wielding, right? Which would mean I want them to have dual wielding again. You know, it's double negative. That belongs on a different list. If we want to do some sort of list or some sort of video where it's like, these are things that I think should be in Elder Scrolls 6, we can do that too. But that's just a tricky little way of getting around it. It makes it too easy, right? Because I could just say any number of things. In a similar vein, stipulation the second. It needs to be within the realm of plausibility, or at the very least topical. Just like guns were, right? Just like firearms. Which in truth, because there's always an exception to the rule, I would be okay if they went down flintlock fantasy, not unlike Pillars of Eternity or Avowed, right? Wherein you have very, low-tech firearms. You definitely don't want anything that's like automatic or semi-automatic, but, like black powder stuff, I would be okay with. But even then, I would still prefer an err on the side of saying, no, thank you. Right? No, thank you. All right. So now, with all that out of the way, right? With all that out of the way, we've covered it all. We've spoken on our stipulations and all of that. First on our list, if no particular order, guns. Second, a shared universe with Fallout and Starfield. This was on everybody's lips at a certain time when Fallout 4 dropped, and inside of the Pridwin, there was that fun little plant that looked a lot like Nirnroot, right? And folks started popping off. I'm sure you can still find any number of videos that took it with 100% sincerity. But as far as I know, as far as we ought to presume, it's non-canon. It's just a fun little nod, right? It's just a fun little thing, like an Easter egg, right? How come Fallout gets to have goofy little non-canon Easter eggs, right? All over the place, but you tie one back to the Elder Scrolls and suddenly it's canon? Give me a break. It's not canon, right? It's just within the realms of, wild and wacky wasteland or whatever it was called. But yeah, I don't want them to make it official in any way where it's like, oh, Elder Scrolls is the far-flung future after Fallout, or somewhere in Starfield, Nirn exists. Mundus is out there, right? If you keep looking far enough in Starfield, you'll find Nirn, you'll find Elder Scrolls, you'll find Earth, you'll find Fallout. I don't want any of it connected. It's fine to not have it be some sort of verse, right? I don't think we need a Bethesda verse, right? All this versing of stuff, making it all into one big universe. I don't need it. I feel like we're past that point where I don't want it, right? I feel like there are very few situations in which it still happens and it like brand new and I get excited for it. I feel like everything that's already in place that's doing it, feel free to maintain, but I don't want anything else new sort of coming out and being like, yeah, we're some new type of verse or whatever, right? If things already had connective tissue, that's totally cool. I don't mind. But new stuff in this way, I'm starting to sour on it a bit. It's starting to get a little stale. Anyway, number 3. A new playable race. Number 3 is a new playable race. I feel like I need to hold up fingers every time. Well, that would be 6. But number 3, a new playable race. I think there are plenty of playable races you could sort of add to the docket. But the big issue with that is that of the playable races, there are already plenty that get way more service than a lot of others, right? I'm on the record saying that I think that there's so much potential. I mean, just look at our tier list and ranking of the playable races in Elder Scrolls. We say it a lot that there's a lot of races that have really, really high potential to get explored, right? Dunmer got so much exposition in Morrowind and have kind of been at the top. Maybe Nords, I don't even think Nords start to eke them out, but maybe they do. Maybe you could convince me. Maybe it's my own like internal biases and favoritism for Dunmer speaking. But regardless, you know, like orcs, there's a lot of potential there. Khajiit, there's so much just on the periphery that we never really fully get to explore. Maybe once we deal with everybody else that we can actually play as and get all of that exposition, get all that world building and lore and stuff, then we can think about like, oh, this is some long lost Yakuden. Here's somebody who was straight up from Atmora. You know, oh, you can play as Akaviri this time around, right? We'll hold off on that. I'm fine if you want to include those characters in the game as like a one-off, like, oh, hey, this is a bit of an odd situation. There's someone from Akavir just so happens to be in this area, right? I'm down for that. But I don't want them to be a playable race just yet, right? I'm fine with like a one-off quest or a one-off quest arc, you know, or even have it be sort of a focal point of some sort of faction or whatever, right? Oh, maybe the like new version of the Mages Guild found somebody, you know, and there's sort of like an anthropology angle to it. You know, you could have that. But keep it limited in scope, I think, while we're still fleshing out a lot of the stuff in the games themselves. I think that's the best bet. Right? Leave that for modding. Leave that for unofficial stuff. Anyway, number four. We were mentioning Fallout earlier. This is one that I definitely do not want. There are plenty of good things that I enjoy in Fallout 4 that I would be down to have show up in an Elder Scrolls. But one that I definitely do not want is specifically junk/miscellaneous item scrapping. I don't want that. I enjoy the idea that there are just miscellaneous items that are just miscellaneous. I love scrapping stuff in Fallout, but I don't want to do it in Elder Scrolls, right? I don't want to do it there. I'd rather not. Rather just maintain it as it is. I would love to see scrapping return to where every single junk item has some sort of like value within a separate system, a separate part of the game, right? You could have it to where it's like, you know, mugs are good for ceramics, stuff like that. You know, you find a cafeteria tray, maybe it's made out of plastic, maybe it's made out of aluminum. You can use that for building weapons, building up a settlement, stuff like that. I enjoy that a lot, but I don't want that sort of like scrapping mentality to sort of breach the aesthetics of post-apocalyptia. Right? I don't want that in my sort of sword and sorcery medieval fantasy game, right? I don't want it there. It's okay. Let's just pick up a basket or a wash rag, and it's simply a basket. It's simply a wash rag. There's nothing else complicated about it, you know? Maybe there's a quest where someone's like, oh, I love pillows. Bring me every pillow you find. Something like that. Sure, I'd be down for that. Why not? But it doesn't need to be a part of like a bigger system. Like I said, it works very well in Fallout. I'd like to see it remain there. Right. Let's see here. Let me refer for number 5 here. Let's see here. Just checking that off. Okay. 5. Number 5. Number 5 here. Sorry. Ridiculous mobility options. Not into it. There is a time where it's super cool and super fun, right? Having really high mobility. But as you start to build out the world and make the world more complicated with more systems, maybe you flesh out, I don't know, we're spitballing here. You flesh out like random occurrences. You flesh out little random events. You flesh out like the wildlife system, right? I don't anticipate BGS to have sort of the budget that Rockstar did for Red Dead Redemption 2, where they were able to sort of behind the scenes make all these different animals function in different ways and stuff, and have like a game with one of the more right of its ilk of being like a third person like action game, having as complicated an ecosystem without specifically being a game about like simulating an ecosystem, like a sim or park sim game or something like that. It was very impressive, right? It was very, very cool. But the more you start to do that, and go further down that road, the less I want to fly through those environments. I want to go through them. I felt like Skyrim benefited from just having a sprint button. Maybe you move a little bit faster with like a dragon shout or some sort of passive ability on your armor or whatever, right? You find a ring, you go slightly but noticeably faster. I feel like the days of fortifying speed and athletics ought to be behind us. Bring back athletics as something else. I'm down for it, some sort of like climbing or something, have it function in some other way. Same with acrobatics. But this kind of like ridiculous, unchecked mobility, you have that, and then people's experiences of the open world, I feel, starts to suffer. It becomes more and more difficult to design world spaces and levels and dungeons and stuff like that when you have to account for the fact that that is within the tool set. And because it's such an open world, like immersive sim type of role-playing game, you run into the issue of like, well, are we now going to have to worry about having an area in this dungeon require some type of mobility, right? Famously, Morrowind did it, right, with regards to Great House Telvanni. Excuse me. Was just drinking some water here. Famously, Morrowind sort of did it with regards to Great House Telvanni and their mushroom towers, right? Where there were parts that you could only levitate to. And there are like little secret areas as well that you could only like jump or levitate to in other dungeons. They're few and far between, but they did exist. Meanwhile, Oblivion got rid of 90% of those. I think there's like a handful of locations that you can only access with unnaturally fortified speed / acrobatics, but even then I'm not sure. I think it's a choice where would you rather have this degree of freedom, or would you rather have perhaps more attention paid to like a slower paced world exploration experience? And frankly, I would rather have the latter, right? As their team size has grown, they are capable of really making like super duper verdant and luscious and just like, 16 times the detail. You get all that kind of stuff going on. And I do really like that. I like kind of meandering through a dungeon and just kind of looking around at the little knickknacks. I kind of like following a trail or going off the beaten path, being kind of like led around by the environment of the world and all of that in the overworld. I enjoy that a lot. And in a certain sense, once you get to a character to a certain point, you can just fly through a lot of it and miss a lot of that effort, right? A good example of this is going through in Morrowind Mondays, the Tamriel rebuilt stuff. A lot of the time for my first time through, I deliberately limit myself to not like speed on along through a lot of new areas, and yet still I find myself doing it every so often, right? Inadvertently. And sometimes I feel as though I miss something from that. I feel like at times it's better to sort of go along about it at a bit of a slower pace and sort of take in all of that, right? Like, frankly, I feel as though Skyrim made that attempt. They made those cuts with regards to mobility, and it worked out, right? It worked out. I think it was I think it was fine. I think it was good. I wouldn't be down. I'm fine with them keeping away super high mobility, right? I'm fine with that sort of not being readily accessible. Have like a temporary spell or whatever where you move super fast or super jump, but don't have it be like in the character's regularly accessible repertoire, you know? I think that's the best move. Or even have it like be something difficult to make. You know, I think to Fallout's power armor jetpacks and stuff like that, which I think you can now wear in 76, just a jetpack, right? There was an update a few years ago. Same goes with Starfield. There's limitations on that jetpack, right? Granted, Starfield sort of suffers from like a different problem where the open world exploration, if you're not in a like specifically like authored zone, there isn't always that sort of amazing stuff, right, to sort of explore around and look at, because not every zone is authored in like the same way that all of Skyrim or all of Fallout 4 is, right? There are specific places in Starfield like that, but not everywhere. Anyway, some other stuff. Number 6, I think we are on. Let me double check here. Let's see. Yeah, number 6. Number 6. I would be down for not having. I do not want them to have the return of the repair skill and item durability. I think it's a good idea to get rid of repair. This is actually something that I feel I would love to see return and exist more within Fallout. And it kind of does in 76, right? Fallout 76 has got both that sort of heavy breadth and depth like crafting system where every single junk item has some measure of value, you know, beyond just like selling it for money. It has like some sort of tangible crafting value to it because of the scrapping. So too does 76 have item durability, where you use those to repair it up. Fallout 4 famously did not have that. With regards to weapons. I forget, did they have it for armor? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. But I would love to see it come back for Fallout 5, for a future Fallout game. However, I do think I would prefer to not exist in an Elder Scrolls game. You know, once again, seeing how it's done in Fallout makes me think having items degrade and need maintenance feels so post-apocalyptic coded, right? It fits really well there. I like that a lot. I would rather just have smithing, you know, instead of repair. I like smithing, which isn't a situation where it's a binary decision. You could have both, but I'd rather not have repair, and I prefer smithing. You know, I'd rather make it or upgrade things temporarily or whatever. There's a lot of other action role-playing games where, you know, based on your smithing skill, you can temporarily, at like a grindstone, get your weapon a brief buff for like the next hour of play. You know, I think Witcher 3 did something like this as well, right? Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at on repair and item condition. They kind of go hand in hand. Speaking of other games, as with Fallout, for number 7. Number 7. I do not want From Software combat. I do not want FromSoft, Elden Ring, Dark Souls, your Bloodborne. I don't want that in Elder Scrolls. I think, this is my hot take, I think the mods that a lot of people, like, I see them popularly showcased, the mods where they kind of have that, I think it looks weird. Which I know, true enough, it's a mod, thus it's kind of modded, it's modified on top of the game. And it's an amazing feat that they were able to accomplish and get it working in the game. But dude, I think it looks so weird. When I see it, at a certain point, you reach a like Ship of Theseus scenario with your Skyrim install, right? You put so many mods in there. Is it still Skyrim? I mean, it is. Is it? It is. It is. Is it? But it becomes unrecognizable. Where's the soul of the game? I don't want to be like running around in a Soulsborne-esque fashion. I don't want to be like Z-locking or target locking onto enemies and like circling around them and doing dodge rolls. I don't want that. I think that's some shonky business. I would prefer if it stayed away. Keep that over there in your Souls-like situation, which, we're getting a lot of those games. There is some measure of fatigue setting in. That said, sometimes they hit, right? Sometimes people making Souls-likes that aren't FromSoft, sometimes they hit. See also like, Lies of P, right? That's supposed to be really, really dope. Haven't played it myself, but it's supposed to be really, really competent, really good. But I don't want it in Elder Scrolls. It's a different kind of role-playing game. Like I've said before in the past, it's a sort of immersive sim-esque role-playing game. It's a sandbox role-playing game, right? I don't need the combat to be absolutely buck wild. Having said that, when it comes to combat being absolutely buck wild, the upper limit, I would say, or the ideal model, would be what they had going on in Avowed. Avowed strikes a good balance between being punishing and having a lot of cool, fun mechanics, right? I really loved Avowed's combat. It is unquestionably my favorite, like, first-person melee combat, I think, ever, right? It's exceptionally fun. That would be my upper limit, and frankly, I'd be down for them to just whole cloth steal everything that's present in Avowed. I don't expect that, but man, I would be down for that. But specifically FromSoft, the sort of Soulsborne, Souls-like combat experience, I don't care for it. Right? A lot of people have spent a lot of time trying to get it to work in Skyrim, and they have gotten it to work, and I just don't like it. I'm sorry, I just do not care for it whatsoever. And it kind of goes against the grain of Elder Scrolls is sort of like more chill, it's sandboxy, it's very chill, it's like it's practically at times, depending on what you do in the game, it's like a cozy game, and sort of leaning into that. Also sort of dialing back into our Fallout comparisons. I want to take it back to sort of an observation I made, which isn't to say like I'm the very first person who made this observation, but I remember observing such a thing. I remember noticing it, in Skyrim, in Elder Scrolls, even in Starfield. I do not want Elder Scrolls 6 to have gratuitous gore, right? Once again, this is something that aesthetically functions very well within Fallout, right? Having people explode off body parts, bloody mess, people just erupt into gore, that's fantastic in Fallout. It thematically does not work very well in Elder Scrolls, I think. I think Skyrim hits it kind of at the right point. I would still be down for like limb damage, but I don't want to like be on some sort of execution situation. I don't want to be like hacking off somebody's limbs. It's a little too wild. Thematically, it doesn't fit, I don't think. Granted, you could make it work by virtue of making the entire game a lot more dark and gritty. But I don't know if I want an Elder Scrolls game that works on that level, you know? Which, of course, you know, Fallout isn't that dark and gritty itself. At times it is, but it always has that little, like, opportunity for being tongue-in-cheek, which a lot of that gratuitous violence, you know, see the bloody mess perk, leans into. It leans into that satirical, like, ironic, sort of tongue-in-cheek vibe, wherein, you blew somebody up, you shot someone with a pistol, a low-caliber pistol, and, well, looks like their whole body exploded, right? I don't think it works out in Skyrim land, right? I don't think it works out in any Elder Scrolls, and thankfully, I don't think they're going to do it. Why? Because Starfield didn't do it, and they got guns in there, right? If anything, Starfield, and it, once again, true enough, maybe you don't like this sort of aesthetic of Starfield or whatever, or sort of its overall vibe, but to me, it's very much going for, like, a Star Trek sort of, I don't know, vibe. It's very much trying to evoke Star Trek. Even when you're sort of in other places, at its heart, it's more Star Trek than anything, I think. And in Star Trek, it was very rare to have, like, grievous bodily damage. It was very rare to have dismemberment in any way. And I'm down for Elder Scrolls to continually sort of walk the line between the middle of what happens there and sort of the gratuitous violence of Fallout. You know, I'm down for it being in a sort of middle ground where, like, every so often, maybe somebody gets a head chopped off, right? But I don't want it happening all the time. I don't need all that. I don't want to see all that. I don't want to see somebody, like, bleeding out every turn I take, you know? Unless we're dealing with vampires, in which case, go for it. And anyway, how about this? How about we move on to number 9. Number 9. I do not want an Elder Scrolls game, but specifically Elder Scrolls 6. This is the one that I think we're most likely to actually get off of this list, and I don't want it. And it's very personal. This one is very personal and nitpicky. I don't want a cursor-based UI, especially on console, especially for controller. I don't like it. I should only have a cursor pop up if I'm playing on PC, which I will be doing. But you know what I'm talking about? So many games have this these days. And the worst part is that they're never quite made with PC in mind. They're made with a gamepad, with a console in mind, but also you have a cursor. You know what I'm talking about? Probably the biggest example is, like, Destiny. They're the first big one, maybe the first one ever, but at the very least, they're the first big game that sort of made this console cursor situation. You know, it's where it really started to gain popularity was with Destiny. These days, you can't, like, walk 2 feet without bumping into a game where you've got some sort of, like, strange cursor control. It would be different if it were a lot more satisfying to operate with your mouse, but even then, it feels a little like parts of it just feel fucking off, right? Parts of the UI, the UX, it just feels off if you try and use it with an actual mouse and keyboard, you know? You kind of walk this middle line, and for me, nobody wins, right? It feels dissatisfying if you plug in a gamepad and you're playing around on controller, because you got to deal with this slow-moving cursor that moves at, like, maybe an unexpected speed relative to your own turn rate or whatever, right? Takes forever to, like, navigate the menus and junk. You're on PC, other parts of the menu feel clicky and all of that. You're able to move your cursor around at a speed that you can roughly desire, but other parts of the UI just feel off because they're made with console in mind, right? Oftentimes these games, they don't have a separate UI for console versus PC, you know? I would guess that this is like a cost-cutting method, so that way you don't have to design like a whole nother separate UI, right? Certainly I understand where that's coming from, and I'd rather have that sort of UI rather than not having the game, like on PC or whatever. I would rather have that annoying cursor UI that's like a little circle or a little square or something like that than not having the game. But if given the option, I would so much rather have like 2 different versions. You know, I would so much rather have it. It just doesn't feel good to me. It feels real rough. I do not care for it. Anyway, number 10, our final one, number 10. This one, I feel like maybe it's a big one. Maybe we are in danger of this happening too. I don't know. It wouldn't kill me, but I would really rather not have a bunch of dragons in Elder Scrolls 6. I do not want a bunch of dragons in Elder Scrolls 6 at all. Have maybe a handful of them. Have 1, maybe 2. A handful of dragons around. Maybe one's a boss, maybe one's an NPC you can talk to. But I do not want to be fighting dragons all the time. I don't want them to be like a regularly recurring sort of enemy. Like, oh, you got to the end of this quest arc. Guess what? It's a dragon that you're fighting, you know? I do not want that. I want it to be very rare. I think you have the opportunity to make it be super special in the wake of Skyrim, in the wake of like everybody having played Skyrim at this point, at least to some degree. So many people have played and touched that game. There's no need for dragons. Have it be special when you want to pull the dragon card, right? When you want to drop it on people, like, guess what? There's a dragon in this game. And then you get this cool water cooler moment where people are like, yeah, did you see the dragon? Have you found the dragon in Elder Scrolls 6? It's there. And guess what? In this game, we're not the Dovahkiin, so fighting that dragon is tough as nails, right? It is real hard. Something along those lines. God, that would be amazing. And then conversely, after that, you could be like, Dave, why did you spoil the dragon for me? I just picked up Elder Scrolls 6. Why did you spoil for me that they put a dragon in it at the end of the Fighters Guild? Why did you spoil that for me? That would have been such a cool reveal. But for real, would that not be cool to have it in such a limited form, you know? Have it show up, but you know, dial it back. It doesn't need to be about this. Skyrim was all about dragons, right? I want Elder Scrolls 6 to treat dragons the same way that Skyrim treats Dremora relative to its predecessor, right? So, in Oblivion, there are Dremora everywhere. You can't do anything without running into a damn Dremora. There's Dremora all over, right? In Skyrim, they are few and far between. They are very rare, naturally occurring. Unless you like summon one with conjuration, they are so stinking rare. You may never find one. I don't know if they're involved with part of any major quest, right? Where you have to meet one, right? You're very likely to meet one, I think, in the College of Winterhold, but I'm not even sure if I remember you are required to meet one. But they are exceedingly rare. I want that for Elder Scrolls 6 with regards to dragons. Dragons are everywhere in Skyrim. I mean, even then, they're a little bit uncommon, right? They're not terribly rare, but, you know, you sink in a couple 100 hours and they start to feel like they just never stop coming, huh? But I want them fairly rare. I want it to be sort of, right? I want that sort of dragon to non-dragon ratio to be the same as Skyrim's Dremora to non-Dremora ratio. I think that feels very balanced. It feels very good. But yeah, that's my list of 10. Let's see. We'll run down from the top, which, like I said, in no particular order. Guns, shared universe, new playable race or races, item scrapping, heavy mobility options. I'm fine with some, once again, the way in which Skyrim sort of had the levitation like portal pads. I thought that was okay, right? But anything too ridiculous, dial it back a bit. Repair and durability, from soft combat, heavy gore / dismemberment, cursor-based console UI, and too many dragons. I don't want any of that. No, thank you. Am I a hard no on all of them? Probably not, right? But definitely a few. All right, that'll do it for this week. As I had mentioned, feel free to submit your own general viewer submitted question. Helps a ton if you include a question mark in the comment when you leave it, because I use Control F to sort of sort through all of my comments and whatnot on a weekly basis before I go and make a new IRL video, right? So even if you haven't phrased it like a question, just throw a question mark in there, right? Helps me Control F. I read comments as I get them, all of them. But when I'm going to methodically add it to the list or whatever, I want to be able to find them all in one place. Anyway, that ought to do it for this week. Until next time, please take care of each other.